If you care so much about resources, then why is it in your party they want to get rid, literally, of food stamps and welfare and maternity leave? You seem to care so much about resources when they're giving it to, say, an undocumented immigrant. But when Donald Trump takes away resources from people like you and people like me, you don't seem to have a problem with that, do you?
I just want to understand that effectively the messaging from Democrats is you can come into the country illegally and stay here as long as you like, undocumented, but as long as you don't commit any crimes, you're not going to get deported. Is that basically what they're telling everybody?
Have you ever heard one prominent Democrat in office that has ever made that statement?
No, but they're clearly implying it by being upset that these illegals are getting deported. I mean, you can't be here illegally, whether you commit a violent crime.
David,
yeah, sure.
There is no Democrat in office that is implying that. And I'm sorry that you interpret it that way because you're mistaken. Here's what and I don't speak for all the Democrats because I'm not a Democrat myself, but my opinion is very similar to a lot of the Democrats in this country, which is as follows. And it's sad that I have to explain this to you, David, but the fact of the matter is that those that have lived in this country for decades, that pay their taxes and have jobs that are a very important part of our economy, our position is very simple, which is we shouldn't be targeting those people. Violent criminals, absolutely.
Why not?
There should be
why do they get to stay?
Because, first of all, there should be a pathway to citizenship. And if you are in this country
you
don't have the proper
through the legal channel,
right, which takes about 10 to 15 years, which clearly you don't understand.
That's right,
but that's okay.
No, I do. I get that it takes a long time, but that does not mean millions of people can just walk in and we say, hey, you didn't commit a crime, you get to stay. That's absurd.
You are interpreting it as Democrats want illegals here and they don't want to do anything about it. Okay. That is a wrong interpretation.
But they didn't do anything about it.
Okay, so David,
what did Biden do about all these illegals that came in?
Okay, first of all, are you aware that Joe Biden deported almost 1 million people per year? Are you aware of that? You're not,
yes,
right?
Yes, I am, and those numbers they pale into comparison to what Trump is going to do. And
by
the way, the funny thing is,
you're making
Obama in 2009.
You're making it sound like Democrats didn't do anything. They wanted them to stay here. That is not true based on that stat that I just gave you. And I want to say something else, David, because you became a national treasure over the last couple days because you called into this show and you said that David Pac-Man was one of the main reasons why Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election.
That's not what I said.
David Pac-Man,
I didn't know I became a national treasure, but that's great.
David Pac-Man played your call because it was so absurd and ridiculous. And my question to you is, you never call into this show and you never go after the right. You never criticize Donald Trump for anything. You criticize people David.
I can explain. That's not true. I agree with you a lot of times about bad things that Trump does, but your show is very pro-Democrat, anti-Republican, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm simply challenging the things that I disagree with.
This show is not anti-Republican. It's anti-Donald Trump and anti-MAGA. I believe in borders.
Okay, fine.
Well, but it's not okay because you mischaracterize me. You mischaracterize Democrats in general.
How am I mischaracterizing you? You're the one who's saying that these people should be allowed to stay here if they pay taxes. They've been here for 10 years.
Never did I say that? Did I say that?
Yeah, you said it all.
This is such a perfect example of, David, what I'm talking about when you call into this show. You completely misquote and mischaracterize. What I have said on this show, number one, is what Donald Trump said. Go after the violent criminals. Okay? I agree with that 150%. You don't even know my position on people that are in this country illegally that are not violent criminals, but you make gross assumptions about me. What I've said all along, and I agree to this same statement that I've said for years, is they should have to pay a penalty, but there also should have to be some sort of easier pathway to citizenship than being on a list for 10 or 15 years and getting deported, because they are an important part of our
so then you're saying
economy.
They get deported.
Excuse me, what?
Just because they're a part of the economy doesn't mean that they should be allowed to stay.
All right, let me ask you a question, and it's a very simple one. If you have a problem and you think these people, they broke the law, people that have been in this country for decades, that pay their taxes and have jobs.
They did.
Okay. You have such a problem with them that you're totally okay with them being deported because you want them held to account. But yet I never hear people like you talk about Donald Trump pardoning January 6th insurrectionists, white supremacists convicted of seditious conspiracy that beat the crap out of police officers. Why don't I hear you talking about that?
I completely agree that pardoning was mostly ridiculous. I agree with some of the pardons for the people who were nonviolent, but the ones who beat cops, I think that was ridiculous, and what he did was absurd.
Right, but then why is your priority ahead for those that are immigrants in this country that have lived here for decades that are being deported as we speak?
Because there are tens of millions of them in this country. There's not 5,000.
And you think so? Let me be clear on this.
Millions upon millions.
So let me be clear of this. The overwhelming majority of these people are not violent criminals, but yet
Agreed.
You think they're more of a threat to this country than a January 6th insurrectionist that beat the crap out of police officers, David? Come on, David.
On an individual level, no. None of them, aside from the violent ones, are not more violent.
Then why was it, okay, thank you for answering that question. Then why was it Donald Trump's number one priority in office to pardon those people and to deport many of these people that are not violent?
It made him look good politically. It made him look good
so
politically.
Thank you for being honest. I agree with you. So he cares more about looking good politically than making America safe. Why would you vote for somebody like that? Thank you for admitting
it. I don't agree with that. He did do it to look good politically, but one of the ways to make this country safer is to kick out people who are here illegally, who are using resources that belong to Americans and people who are here legally. Period.
What good is it? What good is it when you care about resources when he withholds funds from the government when it comes to loans and what he's done over the last couple of days? If you care so much about resources, then why would you be okay with him giving tax breaks to the top 1%? If you care so much about resources, then why is it in your party they want to get rid, literally, of food stamps and welfare and maternity leave? You seem to care so much about resources when they're giving it to, say, an undocumented immigrant, but when Donald Trump takes away resources from people like you and people like me, you don't seem to have a problem with that, do you?
I'm totally willing to talk about all that, but I called in because you said you were talking about illegal migrants,
and you mischaracterized my opinion.
And I'm talking about this. Well, if I did, I'm going by basically what I heard from you on this episode. You keep driving home the point of you're saying that you agree violent illegals should be kicked out. Everybody agrees with that, but a step further is also the people who are here illegally, who broke the law, shouldn't be allowed to stay here. Whether it's just a fundamental difference of opinion. Democrats, for some reason, think that they should be allowed to stay here, which is absurd. And Republicans say, no, it doesn't matter if you've been here for 10 years.
So it's more of a concern. So this is more of a concern to you. Some of those undocumented immigrants, again, that have lived here for decades, that have jobs and pay their taxes. This is more of a concern to you than the fact that the guy that you voted for has no replacement plan for Obamacare, concepts of a plan. He withholds federal grants and money to people in this country that are struggling, that need it. I'm just talking about some of the things he's done in the last week. Or what about an executive order lowering the price of prescription drugs, where Joe Biden put something in place where Medicaid, Medicare, they could actually negotiate with the pharmaceuticals to lower the price of prescription drugs. But you don't want to talk about that. But you think the bigger problem is all these godforsaken immigrants in this country that don't have proper documentation.
It's not 500,000.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It does matter. Would it matter if it was 50 million or 200 million? I mean, what's the number?
So you see that the millions of illegals in this country and the overwhelming majority of them that are not violent criminals are more of a threat to this country than all those things that Donald Trump has done in the last week, including getting rid and pardoning of violent criminals on January 6th, having no replacement for Obamacare, withholding federal grants, talking about DEI hires. You're totally okay with this stuff, and you don't think that's as big of a deal as millions of undocumented immigrants in this country that pay their taxes and work hard, that come from good families, that want a better life for them and their families. Maybe you don't want brown people in this country, David. Is that true?
I mean, come on. That's just a ridiculous
statement.
It's ridiculous. I don't care if all these people are Snow White coming from the whitest country in the world. If they're illegal, then they have to leave. And to answer your question before,
then where isn't he going after all the people in Denmark and Sweden and all those white illegals that are in this country? Because when you look at the Dr. Phil videos and the videos of the people that are being documented, the overwhelming majority of them are not white. They're not from Sweden. They're not from Switzerland.
The overwhelming majority of people who are coming here illegally are not white people.
That's not what I asked you. It's not what I asked you. Why is he not?
Well, first of all, they're going after hardcore criminals first, and they're going after the people
not true. What you just said is not true. You just said, quote, They're going after hard criminals first. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, David. You are misinformed. There are over 1,500 people around that figure, give or take, that have been deported in the first week of Donald Trump being in office. Guess what? At least 50% of those people are nonviolent criminals. So don't you give me this nonsense. They're only going after the violent criminals. That's their top priority. No, they're not. And the evidence proved that in the numbers that Tom Homan even has put out publicly. You are wrong.